Hello everybody, I'm Nick, and in this video I'm going to show you how you can use the brand new seeding approach added in .NET 9 to seed data into your database using EF Core 9. So let me show you what I have here. I have this movies API. It's just a basic CRUD API dealing with movies. I have no table, I have a Postgres database right now, and we're going to create and run the migrations as part of this video. So over here, you can see what the service is doing. We have a create, get by ID, update, or delete, and here are all the endpoints. The code is going to be in the description down below. So now that we have that, what I want to do is first start running some migrations in my program.cs. Now, I want to make it very clear. All of this is designed to be run once in the beginning of your application, ideally not from this application. You make a separate sort of migration seeding application and you move all the code I'm going to add there. If you keep it here when you run your application for the first time and it's a scaled out application, meaning you have multiple instances of the same application running, well, you will end up with concurrency issues and some of them will fail. So don't do this in here. Make an app, run that first. Once that container has finished, then you can go ahead and run your applications. This is a very common approach on how to do this. You can, of course, also do it the command way. It's completely up to you. But the idea is don't have it here. So the first thing is I'm going to go up here and I'm going to say await using, and I'm going to get a service scope. So I can get my app.db context in here, and it is a service that is scoped. So I need to say create async scope. So I'm going to say services.create async scope, and just under that, I'm going to say await using var db context, and I'm going to say await service scope dot service provider dot. I actually don't need the await over here, and I'm going to say get required service app db context over here. And that is it. Now I can put all the migration code here, and all that is really going to be here is db context database.ensure created async. Now, if we were doing this the old school way, you would probably have something like this in here, where you can say db context dot, in this case, movies dot create some movies and say add, and then in the end say db context dot save change async. That's one way to do it. However, we got two brand new methods over here on the configuration of your DB context, especially the provider. So here you can say use seeding for the synchronous method and async seeding for the asynchronous method. That's the one we're going to be using. However, be extremely careful. If you use async seeding, it will only trigger if you use the ensure created async method. If you just use the synchronous ensure created method, this will not trigger. The only thing that's going to trigger is the use seeding method. So synchronous to synchronous, asynchronous to asynchronous. I know this is such a weird design. However, be very, very careful. In our case, I'm going to use the async approach. So this method now will fire when this over here fires. That's how it works. So I'm going to say async, and I'm going to load the types over here. So we have the DB context, this boolean, which we're not going to need, and then the cancellation token. I'm going to turn this like this, and then say async. Here we go. And we can put all the seeding code in here. Now in this project over here, as you can see, I've included a library called Bogus. The reason for that is it can just generate some test data for me and can do it deterministically. And this is actually quite important. So I'm going to create a faker. However, the problem we have by using a new faker for movies is that the type of movies in Bogus is a paid extra, which I don't have a license for. So if I say rule 4, and let's just say that I want one for the movie title, I can't just go here and say f.movies. There is no such thing. So for that reason, I'm just gonna go and say person and use person names as movies, because there's movies with person names like John Wick and others. So I'm just gonna say full name over here. I'm gonna do the same for the ID. So I'm going to say ID, and because this is a GUID, I'm gonna say random and then GUID And in the end, I'm gonna say rule 4, and that's the year of release of the movie. I'm just going to use the date of birth year of a person, because I'm sure for this, like, movies have come out while people have been born. I'm just gonna get the year over here, and that is it. I have my faker now defined. However, I'm missing a crucial part, and that is the seed. I need to provide a seed for the randomizer to deterministically create the exact same test data. Just a random number will do. And then I'm gonna say movies to seed equals faker.generate. And I'm just going to generate, 5 movies. You can generate and seed as many as you want. Here, we're just gonna create 5. Now, very important, because this method will fire every time you run your ensure created async method, we need to make sure these movies haven't already been created, because if they have, they're gonna get recreated over and over again. And we don't want that. And if they already exist with the same identifiers, they're going to crash. So what we're going to say here is we're going to say, does it contain the movies, by getting the context? And we're going to say set, get the set, the DB set for the movie, and then check if it contains just the first movie from this set, and we can pass down the cancellation token as well. This is a very easy way to understand that if the first one exists, then the rest must exist, because that's the condition we're gonna create. You can customize this logic in any way you want. This is just a demo to show you the logic. So I'm gonna say that if this doesn't contain anything, and of course I have to await it, then I'm gonna say db context, or context over here. I'm gonna get the set for the movie. I'm going to say add range over here and pass down my movies to seed. Here we go. And then await context dot save changes async. Here we go. And that's all the code we need. I'm going to just put a breakpoint here and another breakpoint over here, and I'm going to debug my application. Again, I have nothing in my database. It's completely empty. So what I'm going to do now, just wait for it. It's going to go here. So this method hasn't been touched, because it's only going to get triggered when we eventually get in there. So we get the scope, we get the DB context, we have it over here. And now we're going to say ensure created async. Again, if this was the non-async version, this method would not fire. Only the synchronous one would fire. So we're calling that, and now we go in here and we get the seed. We generate the 5 movies over here. Here we go. It's a list. So we have Tyler whatever, Don Brackus, great movie, Erica Kibler, and so on. Does it contain them? No, it doesn't. If it did, it would not generate them. So if I refresh now, over here you can see the table, and you can see the movies, all the ones we just saw. If I go and I stop this and I rerun the application, all of it will run again. However, even though this method will be called, because there will be a match on the movie, we're not going to get the same movies regenerated. If I was to put a breakpoint here to see if this would be hit and actually have to debug this to call it, then let's just let it run. As you're going to see, the faker is called, but if I press F5, this method over here, this breakpoint, will not be called, will not be triggered, and will never actually save anything in the database. So this is now the recommended way to approach it. You encapsulate the logic over here, but please, please, please remember the sync async thing on the ensure created, and also please put this in a separate application, put that application in a container, run it, and make your main applications depend on the execution of that container. Only if that container finishes, which means the migrations have finished, only then you can go ahead and run the rest of your applications to make sure you don't have any competing issues that can cause deadlocks and other nasty concurrency issues. Now, there's always the third way of doing all this, which is create a migration where you can say, migration builder, and then insert data, and you can insert your own data into the table manually. That gets a bit too hardcore for me, but you can also do that. But this has greatly simplified the approach. But now I want to know from you, what do you think about this? And what do you think about the design choices of the EF Core team? Leave a comment down below, let me know. Well, that's all I had for you for this video. Thank you very much for watching, and as always, keep coding.